Well, you know what that sound means. It means it's time for DBA710. We'll be going over the Week 2 assignments in this presentation. And I'd just like to preface it all by saying the first week's work looks pretty good. You've done the reading clearly. There's some great posts in there, and I'm looking at the discussions, and those are developing nicely. So we'd like to keep up the good work in those particular areas. But we're going to be adding a new feature to Week 2, and that's going to be a paper. So let's go to the Week 2 assignments and see what we've got here. First of all, you should be watching the video that you're currently seeing here. Now you'll see that the link is not always there because obviously I'm creating the video before I can put it into the class. But it'll always appear in the same place next to the watch section in the assignments, and then there'll be the link there. So we have some readings. And one of the things you'll notice as we look at the classical theories of management and leadership, that I'm only talking about, or I've only referenced 3 of the leading figures from the classical phase, and those are Frederick Taylor, Max Weber, and Henri Fayol. Now, that doesn't mean there weren't anybody else there, or those of you who have had a introduction to management class, principles of management class, haven't heard of additional figures that were important during that period of time. These are leading figures that are always talked about. But the point here is, as you read about the analysis, and these aren't the original works by the authors, these are reviews and analysis done by authors at a later date who are looking back and seeing how these early authors in organizational development and management practices are still important in today's research and still important in today's practice. In fact, one of the things that comes out of the first week's discussion, where we looked at how the management evolves, well, one of the aspects of evolution is certain characteristics are carried forward from an earlier time. Just in like the evolution of the species, there are things that are no longer functional, but they are still embodied in a particular species because of an earlier time. And so when we look out at how management is practiced and how management theory is developed, there are still elements from these early theorists that still exist today. Okay, so that's an important thing to remember. The theories that have stood the test of time will never really become outmoded until the world is run by robots. But as long as it's being managed by people, the works of Fayol, Weber, Taylor, and others will stand up there and be important predecessors to more current theories. So we have some readings, and then we have our assignments, which is one discussion post and then the paper. Now, I had a couple questions about the discussion post and when it's supposed to be, the initial post is supposed to be in the class, when you're supposed to put it in. It varies. I mean, from class to class you'll go, some instructors are using a Tuesday evening initial post requirement. Some are using the traditional Wednesday night post. I would like to get it in as early as possible. Certainly if you go past Wednesday, it's making it difficult for anybody else to respond. Okay, so we don't want to see one post midnight at Wednesday and 4 posts on Sunday evening at midnight. That doesn't really do anything for the discussion. You're kind of avoiding the intent of having the discussion. So the earlier you can get your initial post in, the more likely you're going to have a good discussion, and that's what I'm trying to reward. So I may award bonuses for the earlier you can get your first post in. Anyway, the assignment, the topic, is similar to what we did in the first week. Here you're going to be looking at a specific period in the evolution of management and leadership theories called the classical era. Okay, and the readings will relate to this particular topic and this question. In addition, you have a paper which is going to combine the readings from the first week and the theories there with the theories in the second week. And specifically, what we're going to be talking about is how the classical management theories that we're looking at in week 2, how they fit into this evolution of management research and thinking that's going to extend up to the current time. So we're trying to place their importance and what was discovered then, why it was discovered then, and how as we moved into later theories, how it became a component of both practice and theory at later dates. Now, in terms of writing it, I would encourage you to watch the Scholarly Writing Part 2 video that's in the Start Here section of the class. Here I go through kind of the steps of writing a paper and kind of what it ought to look like. I use an example. So every instructor is going to have a slightly different take on this, but in general, if you look at the types of papers you're reading, if you look at the peer-reviewed journal articles you're reading, they're going to fall into a similar format to what you're looking at here. And my objective, being the dissertation chairperson of a lot of dissertation students, when you get to that stage, is this is how the dissertation is going to look too. It's going to be broken up into the same sorts of sections. Okay, so my opinion about how it's supposed to look and how it's supposed to be done is actually quite important to your future success if you're writing a dissertation for me. Okay. As I said, if you go to Start Here, you'll see the Scholarly Writing Part 2 video link. Also, you see that there's another video link for peer-reviewed journal articles. This is something that we'll want to get into a little bit later. If you're constrained for time, you may not want to watch it right now, but it will be something that we'll certainly be reviewing as we talk about appropriate articles to include in your papers as your references. Okay. As you see in the assignment here, I want 5 additional peer-reviewed journal articles in addition to the assigned readings that you've already got. Okay. Now, another word about that. Just because when you do a search in the library, just because something shows up at the top of the list doesn't mean that's necessarily a great reference for you. You've got to go in and look at the abstract and see whether what the topic is about, what the paper is about, is really going to help your argument. Is it really something that's going to be useful? So, throwing things in there just because it's at the top of the list doesn't necessarily mean it's appropriate for your paper and the arguments and points you're trying to make. So the keys to academic writing, this is sort of a synopsis from what you'll see in the paper, is you use the literature to build the foundation for your position. So you have to understand the assignment, first of all. You have to decide how you're going to approach the assignment, and then you're going to use the literature to build the foundation or the justification for your particular position. You're going to be reading and analyzing and synthesizing what the published authors are saying, and this is more than simply telling me or reporting on what was in the article. That's not a synthesis. A synthesis is to understand what the article was trying to say, the points the authors were trying to make, combining them with other authors and other points of view to kind of come up with your own original interpretation, let's say. So simply telling me what was in a particular article demonstrates that you read it, but it doesn't really serve the purpose of what we're trying to do, which is create your own unique take on this particular topic. You're going to be building your positions out of the ideas of others. Your originality and creativity will be demonstrated by the way you combine those ideas to support your particular argument. Remember to reference things if you're using them. Even if you're paraphrasing somebody, you need to put in a reference. References look good. And in general, you don't use direct quotes unless you can't think of any better way to say it. Okay. So if you look at our peer-reviewed journal articles, most of those do not have lots of direct quotes in quotation marks. Most of them are paraphrasing and referenced, obviously, paraphrasing what those other authors have said. An example from one of this week's readings, the Rediscovering Fayol, and you can see how many references there are just in a couple of paragraphs. Referencing McGregor, Bass, and Maslow, all these important figures in the study of management. That's what you'll be doing. The keys to success for writing a paper: use the literature, synthesize what others have said, so simply report on what they said. You're going to build your definition and your conclusion based upon what the experts have said. And also, the more authorities that you can add to your argument, the stronger your case. Many times I use the analogy of a lawyer building or an attorney building a case for either the prosecution or the defense. The jury doesn't really care what the opinion of the attorney is. That's kind of irrelevant. The attorney may believe his client is innocent or guilty, but really the attorney's job is to make an argument one way or the other, and then provide the evidence and use the evidence to tell the story that the jury can see this is not simply somebody's opinion, this is supported by the evidence. The stronger the evidence, eyewitnesses, forensics evidence, DNA, the stronger the case. The weaker the evidence, circumstantial evidence, for example, trade journals rather than peer-reviewed articles, the weaker the case. And your goal, of course, is to learn how to make a bulletproof, strong case so that when you go up to defend your dissertation, somebody doesn't say, I don't think this is an accurate portrayal of this. Can you, prove it? And if you can't, basically you're showing that you did not thoroughly understand the literature and the theories that came before. So this is all kind of part of a process that we're trying to develop. Well, with that, I'm going to leave you to the week's work. If you need to get in touch with me, you can email, use the Ask Questions feature, you can text message, and I'll be talking to you at some point, if I haven't already, so I can answer any questions that you might have. Well, with all that said, I'm going to leave you with a peaceful song and picture.